Relaxed people amidst murderous prices and taxes. The first thing that surprised me about the UK was how incredibly expensive it is. The word murderous feels more fitting than simply expensive. When describing the cost of living here, all those little bits and bobs that I'd never even thought about in Korea suddenly became significant expenses. No matter how tightly I tried to hold on to my money, it seemed to slip through my fingers like sand. Cars, new and used, are ridiculously overpriced. Apparently, you can buy a car for $7,500 in Germany. That would cost you $10,000 in the UK, all because of taxes. You might wonder, why not just buy a car in Germany and bring it over? Well, you can't, because the UK is one of the only countries in Europe where the steering wheel is on the right-hand side. Public utility costs, like for phones and electricity, are also 3 or 4 times higher than in Korea or Japan. Even when I tried to save electricity by only using the light in one room, my monthly bill was still at least $60. It's a baffling situation, especially since the UK is an oil-producing country, with high-quality crude oil from the North Sea, yet its petrol prices are among the most expensive in the world. Of course, 90% of the fuel price is tax. The British love affair with the past. A common phrase you'll hear from British people is, "What's wrong with the old way?" This perfectly sums up their unique appreciation for things from the past. Rather than the new, Britain is a country that lives in its history. You'd be hard-pressed to find another country with so many antique shops and large museums in every town. And we're not talking about expensive items here. You'll find old brooms, pots, thimbles, baby clothes, sewing machines, shoes, carpets, and even empty tin. Cans, items that most of us would probably throw away, displayed as cherished antiques. In an Edinburgh museum, they even had a coffin on display. When you ask why, the answer is simple. Because it's old, and in Britain, old things are good things. This isn't just true for museums. Many families pass things down through generations. It's a common sight to see a grandmother's well-used furniture or teacups still being used perfectly well at home. This preference for the old extends to cars too. You'll almost never find someone who replaces their car every 3 years. It's considered normal to keep a car for 10 years. And it's not unusual to see people driving the same car for over 20 years. You'll see 1980s Hyundai Excels or even VW Beetles, whose production stopped 30 years ago, still cruising along the streets. Some people are so dedicated to preservation that you might see a Rolls-Royce from the 1930s, looking as if it just rolled out of the showroom. British television is another great example of this preference for the past. The popular soap opera Coronation Street started in the 1950s and has been running for over half a century. Despite its plot revolving around the mundane lives of ordinary middle-class citizens, it remains incredibly popular. They also frequently rebroadcast old sitcoms. A great example is Fawlty Towers, a 1970s series about a family running a small hotel. It's been shown so many times that most British people know the lines by heart, yet they still watch it and laugh every single time. The pathological resistance to change. This resistance to change isn't limited to entertainment. The royals are also notoriously unchanging. The Queen, who had the same hairstyle, pleated Chanel style, skirts and hats from her 20s until she passed away, and Prince Charles, who always wore the same grey double-breasted suits, are perfect examples of this British aversion to change. Rumour has it that Prince Charles has never worn a pair of jeans in his entire life. The British ideal of fashion is something that looks a year old the moment you buy it, and still looks a year old after 10 years. Wearing something that looks brand new and awkward, no matter how expensive, is a fashion faux pas. As a result, there aren't really any distinct fashion trends in the UK. The most expensive clothes are always in basic, timeless designs and stick to classic colours, like brown, grey and beige. They are so resistant to change that they even opposed changing the colour of their public telephone boxes. BT once tried to change the iconic red phone boxes to a high-tech looking yellow or metallic green, but they were met with strong public resistance. Telephone boxes must be red, because they've always been red, the public declared, and the plan was scrapped. The same goes for the black Austin taxis in London, which have kept their 1950s design and colour. At this point, the British aversion to change seems almost pathological. There's a British saying that goes, "It's better to do the same old foolish thing than a new wise one." British people are the kind of people who, on a Saturday afternoon, go to the same pub, sit in the same spot, and drink the same kind of beer. They even drink the same amount every week. A person who has 1 pint always has one, and a person who has 2 always has 2. This deep-seated resistance to change sometimes leads to unexpected outcomes. While most European countries adopted the single currency, the euro, the UK did not, although there were arguments for and against. Joining, the emotional argument of not wanting to give up the pound was stronger, the slowness that tests your patience. After getting used to the British cost of living, I began to feel frustrated by how slow British people are. They are so slow. Any foreigner planning to live in the UK should probably start by practicing patience. During my second winter in the UK, our boiler broke down. I contacted the landlord, who contacted the agent, who sent a repairman. The first repairman couldn't fix it, so a second one was sent. The second one couldn't find the part, so he ordered it from the factory. The ordered part didn't fit, so he had to replace it. In the end, it took exactly 20 days to fix the boiler. The temperature inside the house dropped to near freezing. We spent our days taking refuge in the library and shivered under blankets at night. With a small rented heater, the great economic transformation. However, these are the same people who recently went through a major change. In the 1970s, the UK faced a huge economic crisis. The cradle-to-grave welfare policy led to a growing tax burden on the middle class, and the deepening conflict between corporations and unions brought the entire national economy to the brink of collapse. This was the so-called British disease. By 1976, the UK's foreign exchange reserves were so low that it had to receive financial aid from the IMF, a humiliating moment for a developed country. In 1979, Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister and declared that the state is not a nanny for the people. She began to boldly reform labor laws and welfare systems while restructuring the economy. She shifted the industrial structure from manufacturing, like the declining coal and shipbuilding industries, to a service-based economy. She privatized state-owned companies like airlines, railways, electricity and gas, which were not profitable. As a result of these industrial reforms, 75% of the UK's working population now works in the service and high-tech sectors. Also, 96 of the world's top 100 companies have invested in the UK. These foreign companies account for 20% of the total employment. The reforms revitalized the British economy. The UK recovered its position as the world's fourth largest economy, with an average annual growth rate of 3.5%, the highest in Western Europe. It's truly incredible how the Iron Lady Thatcher was able to completely overhaul the country's industrial structure, especially in a nation where it's hard to even change the color of a phone box. But what I find even more amazing is that the British public accepted such a fundamental change. When the country faces a crisis, like when Napoleon conquered all of Europe, or when Hitler's madness threatened liberal democracy, the strength of the British people re-emerges. While they can be frustratingly resistant to change and inflexible in their normal lives, uniting in times of crisis is a rational form of conservatism that they consistently uphold.
Greenwich Park with you is so grand. Cut us off by the river strand. Least Tunnel, art so wild.